This morning I was talking to a man with a clear, bright expression on his face. You've seen it many times in your life. It's the expression that can only come when things are going well. And they really are for this person. He's a member of this mastermind group that we call our Class on Prosperity. This morning he was enthusiastically giving me the latest details of the unfolding success of a project that is extremely important to him. The most important thing in your life is your life. Did you know that? And his life is just as important to him as yours to you, and his mastermind group, in which he's been working very diligently in recent weeks, is turning a failure in his life into a marvelous success. And this has happened because his mastermind group has helped him to recognize and to admit that a failure was in progress. Until we can see the problem, we can't correct it or change it, can we? And he was really turned on with what was happening to him, and even as we talked, Gretchen, my secretary, called me and said someone wishes to talk to you on the telephone. And I went to the phone. There was a most enthusiastic voice. A beautiful lady, a person who for many years has been a real student of spiritual law, a person who has worked very, very hard to fulfill in her life the conditions of health. I have seen her overcome a very serious challenge in her body. I've seen her work to demonstrate happiness and freedom in her life. And I wish you could have felt the vibration that was on the other end of that line. She said, I just had to talk to you. Just a few minutes ago, there was transferred into my name certain stocks whose minimum value is approximately $100,000. Isn't that exciting? And she went on to say, I'm grateful for the abundance, but I am more grateful for the spiritual experience. That was the excitement. It was the spiritual experience. She said, you know, so often in my life I've been like Thomas. Remember Doubting Thomas, who was really Thomas the twin, and who represents the faculty of understanding in the mind? And she said, remember that Thomas had to have evidence. He had to see the evidence before he could believe in the presence of the Christ. And I said, yes, but remember in that story when he did see the evidence? Then suddenly the material evidence was not important. It was the spiritual experience that was important. And did you know that to demonstrate your prosperity is exceedingly important in your spiritual life, not just so that you can have things, but so that the evidence of the presence of God and the power and the intelligence of God will become real to you. There is a Thomas in us that must see the evidence before we can believe the invisible world of power and of beauty and of love that is the real source of our good. In this lesson this evening, we're going to learn how to turn mistakes into miracles. We've been told that people learn by their mistakes. Do you believe that? It is almost never true. Who do you know that has learned by their mistakes? Think about it. Have you learned by your mistakes? We just keep on making them, don't we? No, we really don't learn by our mistakes. People learn to ignore their mistakes, to deny that they make them, and I just happen to think about how sometimes we shyly and smilingly say, the devil made me do do that. You know, that's the closest that most people can come to the admission of personal error. But when they say the devil made me do that, it was not really themselves, but the devil. So they even then have not really admitted that they made a mistake. You see, we're taught to be ashamed of our mistakes and of our defects if there is a weakness that we have in our lives. Hide it. Don't let anyone find out. We have never been taught to turn our mistakes, our defects, our shortcomings into assets. And actually, our mistakes and our weaknesses, if handled in the right way, and notice that I said if handled in the right way, not just if we make them, but if we handle them in the right way, they can become our greatest assets. Actually, our mistakes were necessary because they were an important part of our growth. That's where we were at that time. And we should not be disturbed by any mistakes that we've made in the past, but we should be very much concerned if we continue to make them. If I continue to repeat the patterns of mistakes in my life, then I have something to be concerned about. Now, I use the word mistake. What does it really mean? Well, the word take means to get into our possession. It means to acquire. Mr. Webster says it means to admit or to give access to. So when you take something into your life, you have given access to something. Have you ever taken something into your life that did not belong in your life? A take in the movies or on television is a scene filmed without interrupting the run of the camera. Or if a recording is being made, it's a recording made in a single session and you don't stop. You just make it. You take it. Now, how often does that really happen? How often does it happen that the directors and the actors and the stage crew and the cameramen go all the way through from start to finish without having to retake? They retake or reshoot the scene because they made a mistake, didn't they? A mistake. Our lives are filled with mistakes. We go into an event and we don't get through it the way that we should. It is a mistake. We stand before the cameras of life, acting out the role that has been assigned us. But suppose that we thought that every role that we acted out was perfect. Oh, we would never retake then, would we? Because we did not make a mistake. We would never say, cut, stop the cameras, go back to a certain point. Now think what a lousy movie that would be. And that's what most people's lives are, a lousy B movie. Because they're filled with poor acting, bad lighting, no script, and virtually no direction. As a matter of fact, if the director is on the scene at all, he's either depressed and saying nothing, or he's emotionally over-responding and ranting and raving and waving his arms, and we've had no real direction because we could not separate the good from the bad, or the wheat from the chaff in our lives. And therefore, we could not move away from the bad by observing the scene that was on camera and saying cut when the quality was unacceptable, because we could not see our own unacceptable behavior. It was the other actors who needed to retake, and so if we do go back and start the scene all over again, we act out our own role in the same way because we were right all the time, weren't we? Change it for the other person. Director? Well, that's not the way life is. Failure in life is not a single major event occurring in a person's life. Failure is usually a series of small mistakes repeated over and over, moment-to-moment mistakes with no retakes. Failure is usually invisible failure patterns in the mind becoming visible as the attitude and lifestyle of the person, but unseen by that particular person. That person is looking beyond themselves to see where their problems, their failures, their unhappiness is coming from. A person called me yesterday asking for direction with an assistant business associate. A beautiful person who cannot seem to admit the small but irritating mistakes that she makes all day long in the business situation. She cannot see them, therefore will not admit them, and therefore cannot change. And that person will not be advanced until her mistakes in that business situation are corrected. And did you know that life will not advance us either? We will not be promoted forward and upward until we can observe our mistakes. You cannot find your way into success until you can find your mistakes. And your mistakes will guide you forward. So do not fear them. Just yesterday I picked up an article by a very dear friend of mine, a marvelous student and teacher of truth, Vera Dawson Tate. And the title of the article was, All is Good? Is that a stumbling block or the truth? And she went on to say that one of the things that often confused her in her early truth study was the remark made by teachers that all is good. And she said the confusion arose in my mind because all I had to do was look around me and see so many things that were wrong. For one thing, I myself had come into the study of truth because of a need for healing. If all is good, did it follow that sickness is good? And during the period when I was seeking to understand that statement, all is good, and all that it implied, I came across some remarks by Charles Fillmore, the founder of Unity, that threw great light on the subject. I'd like to read to you some of Mr. Fillmore's remarks. He said, metaphysicians have so thoroughly trained themselves to say all is good that they gulp down all the unsavory messes of life. We, in Unity, differ very radically from those who hypnotize themselves into mental torpor by continually holding the thought that all is good and applying it indiscriminately to all that appears. Remember that man makes all appearances and names it good or evil according to the pleasure it gives him. God furnishes the raw material, as it were, out of which this appearance is formed. And this is always good, because its pure essence cannot be polluted. Remember how in our early lessons we were talking about the universal life substance that is good, totally good, that we with our thinking and feeling are shaping and forming into the events and circumstances that become our own unfolding lives? Well, we take this inherently good universal substance, mind substance, and sometimes we shape it in ways that are not good. So much that mankind has found disagreeable and undesirable has been blamed on God by those persons who say, piously, it's God's will. It's God's will. It's an act of God. So many of the not good things have been called acts of God. And friends, they never were God's will at all. If there's any suffering or lack in your life, you can be absolutely certain that it is not God's will. It has been your own willfulness. Always if there is suffering or lack, it comes from the misunderstanding of the human mind. Let me read to you from the 8th chapter of Romans, the 28th verse, because a great deal of misunderstanding has come from the single statement. And we know that all that happens to us is working for our good. Now, it did not say that all that happens to us is good. It says that all that happens to us is working for our good conditionally. It doesn't even say that all that happens to us is working for our good, period. If we love God and are fitting into His plan, if we are practicing the presence of God, if we're seeking to fulfill the conditions of the spiritual life, then all things begin to work together for our good. but you don't say that everything is good, that everything that I do is good, that there is nothing but good. As a matter of fact, if you haven't admitted defeat, you may never experience success. How did you like that? If you have never admitted defeat, you may never experience success. This year in our book room, we have sold 1,000 copies of this remarkable little book, The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino. And as you know, Mr. Mandino is an inspirational speaker in much demand and at a very, very high fee by large corporations who seek to motivate their executives and their sales departments. These are companies that know the value of spurring people onward and upward toward success. Now, do you know what Mr. Mandino's greatest value is and was? His failure. Does that surprise you? His failure. You see, in his middle years, he lost his family, he lost his money, he lost his ability to function successfully as a person. And then he turned it all around. You see, you would never have heard of Og Mandino if he hadn't been a failure, but he's a special kind of failure. He's a failure who admitted it to himself. And he admitted that of myself I can do no thing. And in that moment, his worst liability became his greatest asset. But only because he could admit his failures, his weaknesses, his shortcomings. Not to admit them in a negative way, but he could admit them for the purpose of canceling or negating the bad that had happened to him in his life. Now, he didn't say that the bad was good, because if he'd called it good, he would not have been admitting the failure. But he said, the bad is going to work for my good. I'm going to turn my life around and go the other way, and he has done it, and not only that, but he knows the system so well that he can teach any other person who is willing to admit their own personal failure to achieve the same success in life that he has. You will be successful as a failure, continuing moment to moment to repeat your mistakes until you can admit your mistakes. Your mistakes. If you haven't faced your weaknesses, you may not find your strength. You would not have heard of Helen Keller if she hadn't been blind and deaf. And not only is her name in my new dictionary downstairs in my office, but her picture is in my dictionary. That's an image of herself that she never saw. She never saw herself with her eyes. And her so-called weaknesses became her strength. So much so that there's hardly an American who has not been inspired in some measure by her story. But in that story, do you remember how she fought to hide and to accept her smaller identity and to feel and to act out a role of inferiority? Do you remember that? But there was a person there in her life that would not permit her to do that, and moment to moment called her forward to correct the mistakes that she was making. Think how many mistakes that she made in this limited world of communication before she got it right. If you'd never heard of Helen Keller, and someone said a deaf and blind person becoming an author and lecturer, an example for all normal people to follow, impossible. But you can't say it now because you've heard of Helen Keller. She did it. Let me ask you, what are the defects that you can't or won't see? What are you blind to in your own life? What are the things that you can't bear to hear about yourself? What are you hiding from about yourself? What mistakes are you continuing to make? What misconduct concepts do you have about yourself in life? Because until you can see them, until they become obvious, they cannot be corrected. Happened to look down at my tie tack. It's a pearl. Did you know that the pearl starts off as a mistake? The oyster takes into its shell something that does not belong there, a grain of sand or other irritant. And it becomes, to that oyster's soft body, a mistake. It doesn't take the oyster long to find out either that something bad has happened. Now, what is the oyster's reaction going to be when it discovers that it has taken something into its life, into its shell, into its consciousness that doesn't belong there? Will it sob and cry and feel sorry for itself and say, well, it wasn't my fault? I don't know how that grain of sand got in there. Don't blame me. Or will it take the opposite metaphysical position and say, well, it isn't even there at all. I will ignore it. It doesn't exist. If I look away from it long enough, it will go away. Have you looked at some mistake in your life and said, I don't see it, I will not believe it, I cannot admit it. If I turn my head and sob and cry a bit, it will go away? Still there, isn't it? You see, the oyster recognizes its mistake and takes corrective action to turn the event from painful to productive. You can take any mistake that you've ever made and turn it from a painful experience to the most productive experience that you've had all day or week or month or year if handled correctly. It'll become the pearl of great price in your life. Did you know that? In Lessons in Truth by Emily Cady, that's the basic textbook of the Unity Movement. And in the chapter on denials, beginning on page 40, and I suggest that you read again the chapter on denials and on affirmations and on personality and individuality. Mrs. Cady says, in these lessons in unity, we have seen that besides the real innermost self of each of us, the self that is the divine self, because it's an expression or pressing out of God into visibility and is always one with the Father. In addition to that, there is a human self, a carnal mind which reports lies from the external world and is not to be relied upon fully. This is the self of which Jesus spoke when he said, let him deny himself, that self. This intellectual man or carnal mind, or whatever you choose to call him, is envious and jealous and fretful and sick, and he's selfish. The human self seeks its own gratification at the expense, if need be, of someone else. You know, we've tried to find our happiness, our prosperity from that human self. We've taken this human carnal self out into life, and we've said it's going to be successful and prosperous. It's going to make all that money that I need. And you know what? For a long time, we thought it was. It looked like it could. And once it did, and then it lost it. Because what it does can never last. It's never permanent, and it's never real. That self will not prosper. No. But your real self, that other self, is never sick, never afraid, never selfish. It's the part of you that seeketh not her own, is not easily provoked, and thinketh no evil.
I was hound. Yes, and the yes, and that. To the thing out, and the party was they threw out, and it didn't the kind of. They threw out, and the tumble was, there is our thing. Remember, there is half my out, first the first the past. Oh, that's all, but not be there. Fan, dus jouw is niet over voor. Dat is er naar nee, dus jouw 5 hier. Fine. Ja, dat is niks. How can I get out from the group? That's why it's a test.
Who does it lie to? It lies to you. It says, it's not my fault. How could that happen to a nice person like me? I try so hard. Doesn't that just tug at your heart when you hear that? And in your lifetime and mine, science and the human race have discovered more about how the mind works and how the events that come into your world and mine are formed and shaped than throughout all the other time in history. Now, certain great ones like Jesus and the other mystics have known, and they've been trying to tell us. And now we're beginning to learn that our mistakes come from ourselves, this limited self, this small self that we're putting off. This perfect self does not make them. It does not. And when we have a retake and let it stand before the camera of our life and enact its role in life, then we've got an experience that is lasting and beautiful and permanent. Now, if our problem has been in the way that we have thought and felt, the way that we believe, then we can change what we think and believe because it is we who decided to think or believe what we believe in the first place. If you decided to believe what you believe and what you believe is causing you your problems, then you can change what you believe because you decided to believe it in the first place. But you can't do it unless you can see the mistakes in what you believe, unless you can see what you have taken into your mind that does not belong there, unless you can see the grains of sand that are there and begin to turn them into the pearls of wisdom and of understanding. And you do this by a denial or the saying of no to something, an idea that we formerly said yes to. A denial is saying no to something that I formerly believed in that was not true. The word deny comes from a Latin word meaning to completely say no to. And deny means to declare untrue, to assert the contrary of, to contradict, to refuse to believe, to reject. Now, we already believe our failure patterns, and we will continue to believe them and act them out until we can admit them or deny them or reject them. Deny also means to abstain from indulging oneself in. Remember last week how we talked about breaking out of our comfort zone? We have indulged ourselves in our misery, in our limitation. To deny yourself is to deny that self the right to indulge itself in the continuation of limitation. That's what a denial is. To deny oneself means to deny the self that suffers the right to suffer. To stop feeding that self with the ideas and the experiences that permit it to continue. If you've done any piece of work incorrectly recently, or if you found yourself not demonstrating the success that you want in your life, the first step that you take toward getting it right, to undo the wrong, to begin again from that point, is to admit that the mistake has taken place in the first place. You see, if we've believed wrong about God and about ourselves, and if we've believed that God was angry with us and that we're sinners who ought to be afraid of God, if we've believed that sickness and poverty and other troubles are evil things put here by this same God to torture us in some way into serving Him better, we're going to have to deny that. If we believe that we have pleased God best when we have become so absolutely subdued by our troubles as to become patiently submissive to these problems, not even trying to rise out of them or overcome them, we're going to have to deny ourselves the right to think and to feel and to act out that role in life. And no one can deny this for you but you. You are the great director of your life. No one can step forward now for you as an adult and tell you how you're going to act out this next scene of this next experience that is your unfolding life. You are that direct. And in this sense, if we repeatedly deny any false or unhappy condition, it will begin to lose its power to make us unhappy. In Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz, just a great book that I believe each one of us needs on our bookshelf. In Chapter 2, Discovering the Success Mechanism Within You, I'll pick up just a few thoughts that are in that book, not quoting them directly. But I suggest that you read Chapter 2 of Psycho-Cybernetics, because there is a success mechanism that's built into every human being. Now, it may seem strange, but it's only been in the last probably 15 years that scientists have understood how the human brain and nervous system work to achieve a goal. But you have a built-in guidance system, and every living thing has that same system built within it. It's a goal-striving device. It's put there by your Creator to help you achieve its goals. God has a plan for you. Your own desires are God's plan for you. And God's plan for you, in broad terms, is to live, capital L-I-V-E. Now, in man, the goal to live means more than just physical survival. It means that you are created to experience certain emotional and spiritual satisfactions as well. Suppose that when these good things happen to you in life, these marvelous demonstrations that you're making, that you were incapable of responding to them emotionally. Suppose you could not experience the joy of them, or the feeling of beauty of a sunset. The universe has created you as a being who has an unlimited ability to know the joy of life, not just physical existence. And you have within you a success mechanism that is absolutely guaranteed to move you forward into the experience of that success once you learn how to use it. It's the same mechanism that will produce for you either success or continuing failure. You and I will always be doing one or the other on a continuing basis. And the same mechanism that guarantees success also guarantees failure. So which do we choose? We make the choice. The success mechanism in man can help you to get answers to any problem that you have, any solution that you need. It will help you to unfold that creative talent that you have. It will help you to run your business, to sell real estate. That's what you're doing. To reach that point in life that you have the freedom to travel. It will fulfill you as far as the kinds of relationships that you need to bring happiness and peace to your heart and mind. In other words, it's the desire of your Creator that you will live a fuller, freer, happier, and more prospering life. Now, you are not a machine, but within you there is a kind of a machine that is based on the idea of a servo mechanism which you use and which operates very much like an electronic computer and a mechanical goal-seeking device. The very word cybernetics comes from a Greek word which literally means the steersman. You have within you a mechanism that will steer you unerringly to your goal. Because servo mechanisms are constructed so that they automatically steer their way to the goal or target, or to the answer, or to the prosperity that you have envisioned. But you must have envisioned it already. Remember, in our earlier classes, we have been building a pattern in your mind of the kind of person that you want to be. Your goal is to become a certain kind of person. And being that kind of person, then you will have the experience that all persons of that kind have. Prosperous people are fulfilled in every area of their lives. And you have a device that will steer you unerringly to the target that you are shooting for. Now, all servo mechanisms must be equipped with sense organs, such as radar, sonar, or heat perceptors, which bring information from the target. Now, these sense organs keep the machine informed when it's on the correct course. That's called positive feedback. If it's heading straight toward its goal, then it gets positive feedback. And it does not react to positive feedback. It does not steer itself if it's going toward its goal. But when it commits an error and gets off course, that's called negative feedback. And the machine reacts to negative feedback by correcting itself to the right or to the left, whichever is necessary. In other words, there is a corrective device that responds to negative feedback. But in man, what is this correcting device? In your own servo mechanism, what is it in you that is going to tell your guidance system when to steer? It's when you catch yourself making a mistake. Now, if you don't make any mistakes, you go round and round in a circle called a pattern of repeating my mistakes. Have you ever had that happen to you? But I don't make mistakes. Okay? I keep on making my mistakes that I don't make. You see, there must be a steering mechanism. Now, the moment that if I can catch myself making a mistake, which means getting too far off the beam, it can be an emotional mistake. Have you come to know how you are supposed to respond to your days and to the events in your life? Do you know that you no longer have the right to be depressed or angry or resentful? Or have you yet thought that is a mistake? If it's not a mistake, you can keep on doing it, can't you? You haven't made a mistake. You just get mad at it. It's not a mistake. So you can't correct anything. But the moment that you see that it's a mistake, and then you want to steer back toward the goal, you have a corrective mechanism that instantly responds to the information that you're feeding into it. And it will always keep you unerringly on the path. So, the servo mechanism accomplishes its goal by going forward, making errors, and continually correcting them. That's the way that a torpedo gets to its target. That's the way that you and I will get to our good, whatever that good is that you have assigned yourself as your own prosperity. We don't go straight to prosperity. We go there through a series of zigzags. We literally grope our way forward by making mistakes to the right and to the left. But if you correct your mistakes quickly enough, to the right and to the left, it will appear to those who are observing that you go straight to the goal. You see, you don't go into the ditch on the right and then to the ditch on the left. You learn how to catch yourself. And once a correct or successful response has been accomplished, then you remember it for future use. You don't change it. You just continue to do the correct thing, the success thing. The automatic mechanism duplicates the successful response for future hours and days and experiences. Now, once you correct a mistake, then you forget your failures. By forgetting them, meaning you no longer react to them, you remember them and you smile, and you can help others who are making similar mistakes correct their mistakes. But you change the habit pattern. Perhaps the most amazingly successful demonstration of mass spiritual healing and transformation of personality and character in the 20th century has been through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Almost 1 million people have been healed. They've recovered from a fatal condition. And not only have they been healed as far as the physical allergy or condition has been concerned, but I would say that in most of those people, there's been a change, a dramatic change of personality and of character. Now, the entire system of thought that these miraculous demonstrations are made from is based on the recognition of personal powerlessness, number one, and the awareness, the admission, the recognition of the mistakes that they have made. Let me read to you from the 12 steps of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. We admitted that we were powerless, that our lives had become unmanageable. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could establish a new order in our lives. We see that things have not been going right. Now, for some of us in our prosperity class, have you wondered in recent days why you have not been making your demonstration as perhaps you should? Have you thought, gosh, with these classes under my belt and the books that I've been reading and the hours I've been spending in meditation, I should be moving forward with a more startling demonstration that I'm making. Has that thought occurred to you? Of course it has. Now, with the background that you have, this is a good time to admit again, we are personally powerless. The personality can't do it. And we come to believe one more time that a power greater than ourselves can establish its new order in our lives. As a matter of fact, it already is right now. And we make a new decision to turn our will and our lives, our will and our lives, over to the care and direction of God as we understand God. And next we make a searching, fearless, and honest examination of our minds. Now within the framework of our success program, of our prosperity mindedness, let's get out our pad and our pencil and begin to observe ourselves. And honestly evaluate yourself to see what it is that you're now doing, that you've always been doing probably, that has kept you from your unfolding good in the past. Because if you can see it, you can correct it. And don't be afraid to look at it and to write it down. It will probably become the greatest asset that you have. It's the fuel that's going to put your rocket into orbit, I'll tell you that. Always, when you go into a new orbit, it requires a great expenditure of energy, does it not? And that energy must always come from some fuel that is burning. And the thing that we're going to burn up are our old habit patterns, the mistakes that we have made. So we're going to observe ourselves right now, and in this week that follows, make a searching and fearless, honest examination of yourself, moment to moment. Begin to observe you within the actual framework of your moment-to-moment experiences. Evaluate yourself, not critically, not as a harsh, cruel judge, but check out your servo mechanism. Are you going too far to the right, too far to the left? Are your emotional and psychological responses that day the ones that you know are designed to carry you straight to your goal? How are your attitudes really? And when you catch yourself with the wrong attitude, instantly ask the power, the intelligence of God, to steer you right back towards your goal. And watch what will happen to you. You will be amazed. Every time you catch yourself in a mistake tomorrow, you've got the greatest opportunity for growth that you can possibly have. For change, at that moment you can change, and you will actually feel yourself changing direction the moment that you catch yourself making a mistake. And the energy that will come into you will expand your mind. It will inspire you. Suppose you can't admit your mistakes. That's when depression comes. That's when negative responses to life come. Now, after you have observed some mistakes that you make, admit them to God, to yourself, and to your mastermind group. Or, if there should be some serious and personal mistakes that you have not admitted from the past, with another human being, just one person, someone who is shock-proof, someone who has admitted their own mistakes, and you know they have. And we're admitting these mistakes so that we can release them, redirect our lives. In the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, there's another step, the 10th step, that says we continue to observe ourselves, we continue to take personal inventory, and when we are wrong, we promptly admit it. Why promptly? Because the more quickly that I can admit a mistaken attitude, the more quickly I'll be back on the path. I'll be back on the beam. If I can observe myself in action, life becomes the most exciting experience. Because we're not here to blame ourselves. We're here on this earth to grow. And it's all right if you make mistakes, but it's not all right if you don't correct them. It's not all right if you don't admit them, because that's the only way that they can be acknowledged and changed. So do you see how that the admission of your mistakes can be the beginning of the new miracle in your life? Go forward this week observing yourself. And if you do, you'll have the most exciting life you've had in a long time. So it is.
This concludes the lesson on tape number 10. Now proceed to tape number 11 for the continuation of Prosperity Principles That Work.